February 15, 2023 Election Board meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. For those of you who haven't been at prior meetings, can you hear me okay?
No.
Is there anything coming out of this? No sound at all in this one.
Oh, here, your light's not on.
Yeah.
Here you go.
There we go. How's that? There we go. Well, it appears to me that it's not very well functioning. Okay, that should work better. For those of you who are here for the first time, my name's Tom Dixon, and I'm the newly elected chair of the election board. This is Chuck Leone, who's the appointed co-chair from the Democrat Party, and Amy Rolfes is the county clerk. So we will start our meeting. We have agendas here. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the January 13, 2023 meeting. Do we have, we've all had a chance to look at those. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve.
And a second?
Second?
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed? We have a brief review of the declarations of candidacy and the candidate statements of organization. And this is just by way of update. For those of you who are not familiar with the process, when somebody declares for candidacy, they have a certain period of time in which to get their what's called a CFA-1 form in. So that we're still awaiting forms from Democrat candidates Elizabeth McCombs, Julie Mudrovich, I guess that's how you pronounce her name, Lakita Hughes, Oliver Davis, Rachel Thomas Morgan, and Robin Ackerson. And from the Republicans who have declared, we're still awaiting their CFA-1 forms for Kyle Norris, Sonia Perez, Gloria Nibalski, and Heidi Soon-Jabal. So if you're out there, make sure you get them in, and if you know these people, make sure you encourage them to get them in time because they only have 7 days. Very quickly, Dave Smith, can you give us an update on our vote centers and workers for the primary? Or is that yours to do in terms of the machinery?
It is, but generally I wait until I get a list of the locations you want to use for the primary. In fact, I was just looking at the list because I assume that will be one of the first things that we need to do is determine which vote centers we would open for the primary. My recommendation would be not to add any vote centers just for the primary because that will confuse voters next year because they'll think that they can also go there to vote and we won't have equipment to open them next year. But then also not to open any that are out in the county where no one that lives there would have, someone on, a ballot to vote. So just the ones that are city addresses plus any Walkerton, North Liberty, New Carlisle, or Osceola, or the ones that would have races in this particular election. And so I was just starting to go down the list and see how many that number would be because that'll determine the number of voters. So yeah, normally I don't do that. Normally somebody gives me which vote centers will open or you guys, figure that out. But
Tricia?
Tom, this is where we need to decide how many vote centers, because we're not going to use all 42 of them.
Right. So it seems to me Dave's plan sounds like a good one where we use the vote centers just in the areas where the elections are going to be had. I don't know exactly how many vote centers that would be.
that's what I was just trying to kind of get a quick number on.
Okay.
The difficulty if you open them out in Harris Township, for example, is people will show up and they'd love to vote for the mayor of South Bend, but that's probably not going to happen.
The other thing too is that because this is a municipal election year, I think what we need to do is when we make the determination of which vote centers are going to be open, is to make the resolution that this will be in effect for 2023 only, so that it will automatically go back to our regular vote center
Right.
configuration.
That's what, when
When
we,
we get done.
when we do a, when we do move to vote on it, then that will include that in there, so it'll be in the minutes, and we'll make sure we've got it straight.
But yeah, I'm just kind of quickly going down the list, and there's some of them I can mark off without any problem at all, because they're not located inside the city limits, but.
Okay, so I think we can probably wrap this up fairly quickly. Can somebody make a motion that we determine the number of vote centers based on using all of the vote centers that are in the locations where municipal elections are being held in 2023, and that this is only good for the 2023 election cycle?
Yeah, I would make that motion that we open vote centers for the calendar year for the elections in calendar year 2023 that are in the city of South Bend, city of Mishawaka, and each of the towns in which an election is being held.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye, okay. The matter carries completely, and we'll have a subsequent, maybe even still within this meeting, we'll have a ballpark figure as to how many that is. The next issue, before we go to the next issue, which is the number of absentee workers, we've got a final bill from Nemeth, Feeney, Masters, and Campitti for the work they did on the last year's litigation. And we voted at the last meeting. I didn't, I abstained because I was involved in the litigation, but we voted at the last meeting to go ahead and authorize the payment of that bill. So I just want to make sure it's on the record that we've received the bill, and I'm going to pass it down to Tricia Carrico to get it processed through the auditor's office. Next issue up is the number of absentee workers. What are we going to discuss there? What's the issue there? Do we have to also determine how many absentee workers?
But we would first have to know the number of votes. Oh, the absentee workers, no, that's a different question.
Can you hear me? Okay. So we're going to need to know the number of people that be working our absentee office in both here in the county city building as well as the annex over in Mishawaka. I can tell you, I look back on 2019's election, and the turnout was extremely low. And I think there was approximately 2,900 in total absentee people. That's any that came through the mail as well as in person.
Is that the primary?
In the primary.
To
So,
2,000, you're saying, how much?
2019, the last
And that
municipal.
was the number of absentee votes that came in? 2,900?
Absentee, yes.
Okay.
So I don't think that we would need as many as we need in a full county-wide election, and we need to reduce it. In some places, and some days in Mishawaka, they only had 2 to 10 voters tops. So, I mean, we need people to work it, but we also need to be pretty wise about how many.
Okay. Do you have a recommendation?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not really sure without knowing how many people had worked in the last election, and I was a little busy today, thank you, Nick, to look those numbers over. So if anybody has any ideas. I think in Mishawaka, Pat Schaefer. What? During the municipal, how many people do you guys usually have in Mishawaka? Do you know?
In
Is
the
it
municipal, there were 6
4?
of them.
How many?
I don't work in Mishawaka
I
anymore.
understand that.
6 of them.
For
I
the
don't think
primary,
we need
6?
6. I think 4 would probably be enough. And here in the county city building,
That's Cindy, what do you have? Maybe 10? I don't remember.
well, I don't think
That was
10
Democrats.
is that's 10 Democrats alone?
10 Democrats and
So you're
2
talking
Democrats
about
in
20
Mishawaka.
workers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that that's a good number either. I think that it should be a little lower than that.
Okay.
A lot of times, you know, they don't have necessarily things to do, but
Is this something that we could table and you could get a little more time to look into it and then come back next meeting with a recommendation?
yeah. that
Instead of
would
being
be-
put on the spot?
That would work, then I can get numbers together and
Okay.
talk to the ladies.
I do have a concern about, we have to get all of those workers, so we have a
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
true.
okay, so we'll try to,
Contested elections this year, so that could make a difference too in the turnout.
It could yeah, the Democratic ballot does have a number of contested. Thank you,
Okay.
that's a very good point.
so we'll make sure, and if we forget, raise it with us again, we'll make sure to try to set the next meeting quickly then, so that we can have that answer, so that the party chairs can get to work on getting their people to work.
That'll work. I'll
Yeah.
get some data together.
Okay.
If I get a
What
phone
about
call.
ballot deadlines and stuff?
The ballot deadlines?
There's a ballot deadline and worker deadline. Is it the worker deadline, the February 23rd?
It is not.
That's next
That's,
Thursday.
that's the
Yeah.
ballot deadline.
Oh, that's a ballot.
It is.
Ballot deadline?
Yes.
Okay.
You got more time than
All
that.
right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so unless there's objection and somebody wants to make a motion, I'll just move to table the absentee worker number calculation until our next meeting.
Sounds good.
I move to table the absentee worker number until our next meeting.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The matter carries unanimously. Okay, I'm going to turn this one over, the vote center procedures and dress codes, over to Chuck, because he did some research that he can share, and we can have a discussion about it.
During the election cycle last fall, we received a number of concerns from voters, from election workers, and from others relating to the elections process. And of those, I would say that the one topic or the one area had to do with the way that actually just one of the election workers was dressed. He was wearing a MAGA hat at the time. We did some, I believe it was on Election Day, we checked downstate, and the folks at the election division did not think that was a violation of the electioneering rules. And we didn't have in place anything in particular that set any kind of a standard or code, so we were not in a position to be able to do much about that. But we did think that it was important to set some standards, some expectations for those who are working the election. And it has to do with people who are, they're not technically our employees, they're independent contractors, but they stand in the same nature of being employees of the election board during that time period. And I think our expectation would be is that all individuals present a kind of a welcoming atmosphere for all voters who are coming in, some of whom, of course, are experienced, but some of whom have never voted before, or maybe a little bit unsure about what's happening, who's on whose side, that kind of a thing. And so I think it's important that we have a kind of a welcoming, neutral atmosphere, and that includes not only what we say, but also how we dress and how we present ourselves. What we're doing is taking a look to see what other counties are doing. We're looking at the St. Joseph County Personnel Manual, if these folks were regular employees, what the expectations would be. But also, what are other counties doing, not only in Indiana, but perhaps in other places as well. And we don't want to be in a situation, obviously, where we run afoul of constitutional problems. There are some issues as it relates to voters. They have a little bit more leeway in terms of what they can do and what they can't do. But for someone who is there all day and who is part of representing the election board in terms of receiving voters in, we think it's important that there be some expectations. It's really not, the inside of a vote center is really not a public forum where people would have the right to stand up and essentially say what they want to say on any topic. It's really more of a workplace, and that's the analogy that we're drawing. So we want to take a look at the law, but we also want to take a look at what other places are doing as well. And I've been able to find a few examples. I want to find some more, and then I think we'll have some kind of a discussion, I would guess, down the road and see if we can put something together that works.
Okay.
That's my sense.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the specifics of that, there was a worker at one of the facilities who had a MAGA hat or shirt. I think it was a shirt. And we had all gone through the training. It was a hat, yeah. So we had all gone through the training about what constitutes electioneering and what doesn't constitute electioneering. And the training that I think came from the state indicated that if somebody is not a political candidate, then it's okay to wear whatever their stuff is. But we got a lot of pushback from that, and rightfully so, because we were getting calls from that location throughout the day that people were frustrated with it. But we did check with the State Election Commission, and they basically said under those circumstances, since Trump had not declared as a candidate at that as of yet, that even though it was unanimous for the three of us, with Chuck and I and Rita, that we thought it was in very poor taste for somebody to do that. We didn't think that we had the authority. So that kind of spawned the conversation about, well, maybe we can create a dress code, and if it passes constitutional muster, then we can at least have some ability to control that so that people do have a feeling of being more welcome when they go into a vote center. So we're going to continue working on that because we did get a lot of response from people, and we were not oblivious to those comments that came to us. Next issue is notice to party chairs to inspect ballot proofs. Okay, tell me what that is, Tricia, do you know?
You have a deadline coming up?
It's just the deadline?
Do you have that information?
I was actually going to bring my calendar in, because when we went to the Election Commission, they gave us a calendar with all of the deadlines on it, and I was actually going to bring it in.
So,
Do you know that?
Yeah.
Nick Abernathy from RBM, we are doing the first round of proofing as we speak. I should have the ballot proofs to be able to provide to each party tomorrow, so we can kind of get a head start on that. It's always best to be ahead of the game. I think there is a deadline for the 24th, so next Friday, and then a certification that needs to be done by March 3rd.
Okay.
So I'll keep you posted, and we'll get the links out to people where they can access the ballots and make sure they're looking perfect.
Sounds to me like we need the input from the parties, and assuming that they're in agreement with the ballots, then they come back to us and we certify them. That sounds like that's the process that so that's what that issue is up on the agenda, is just an update on where we are in that process. Okay. The next issue on our agenda is a request by Mr. Craig Hamilton regarding his sheriff duties at Schmucker. And we had issues at Schmucker on Election Day where people were complaining that he was, I'll be kind of gentle with this, he was a little overzealous in enforcing electioneering rules, perhaps beyond where the statutory distance would allow. And we ended up having people made complaints, and then we sent our deputized commissioners out there to also rein it in, and then we kept getting more feedback that we weren't being heard, apparently. And but then so at the end of it was really nearly at the end of the day. Mike, you remember when you and Eli went out there?
Probably around
It's like 3, yeah, it was pretty late in the day when they finally went out there to say, you have to stop this. And then when he didn't, then we ended up actually going out with the sheriff and removing him pretty much at the end of the voting day. He wrote us a letter giving us basically kind of a different perspective on what had been going on throughout the day. And then he called me last week and spoke with me in great detail about what his concerns were and about his sense that he was just trying to do his job the best he could. And because we had made a determination that we didn't think it would be good to pay him for that since he didn't respond to us. I told him I would put it on the agenda, unfortunately, and I told him it'd be good if you could come to the meeting, but he's out, I think he's driving a bus until 4:30 or later. So his request is fairly modest, which is just to receive the pay for working all but 15 minutes of the day. That's what that agenda item is. So I don't know, I have my own point of view about that, which I'd like to share, but I don't know if you guys if you have any concerns that you want to raise first.
Maybe we ought to wait until he has an opportunity to actually tell us, so that we all hear the same thing. It'll
Okay.
work better.
That sounds fine to me, and just so you know, I mean, at this point, on election day, my position was, it would not be a good idea to pay him for that since he was not being very responsive to us. But after speaking with him and realizing, he did the best he could, and it's not a huge amount of money, and my inclination would be, and I think maybe yours will be too after you hear what he has to say, my inclination was sort of kind of like, I think he probably should get the pay. I mean, it's not like we yanked him out at 11 o'clock in the morning. He was there almost the entire day. So I will get back in touch with him and ask him to come to the next meeting so he can do a presentation. And failing that, then we can maybe if he can't make it, we can bring his letter and put it in the record and read his record into the, well, let's give him a chance to come in, because he might still want to come in and give his perspective. So, I'm going to skip over number 10, because I think that'll probably want to be about the last thing we do. The youth initiative and request for input. This is something that I wanted on the agenda for all of us, because there's a kind of a certain group of people who are coming to all of the election board meetings, and it's something that's very important to you, and it's important to us. We're up here serving on the election board. One of the things we all noticed on election day is that we're really lacking in young people to help work the elections. And we commented about, when we get through with everything that we've got to do to process this election, we really ought to start coming up with some ideas on how to do some outreach to get younger people here, whether they're high school students in their civics classes or they're college students in government majors and things like that. Because for those of you who have worked the elections, it's kind of come second nature to you, but it's a fascinating process, and it's one of the things. The other, I think, being, as I'm a litigator, I've seen this many, many times, the other being jury duty, where people say they don't want to do it, I'm too busy, and then they go and they sit through a jury and they come out of it and they almost universally say that was an amazing experience. I really felt like I participated in my community. And I think that's the same with work in the election. So I'm going to look for, and I think we all will look for and appreciate any input we can get from those of you who are involved and knowledgeable, and of how we can do some more to recruit minorities. I also know from conversations with Amy Rolfus that that's one of the issues that she wants to use whatever resources she can in the clerk's office to try to do that too, because we need to make sure we're building a base for young people, because I speak for myself, I'm not going to be around very long, so not a lot longer anyway. So that was just it. So that's directed to anybody and everybody. If you've got ideas and you want to forward them to us, we welcome them. Or otherwise, we can set up a meeting where we have comments from people that are sort of outside of the realm of the normal public comment period to get input from people. Do we have other business to attend to before we double back to the hearing on the challenge of candidacy of Bruce Mitchell?
I don't have any more business.
I looked up when we need to have the members of absentee voters and central count workers and that, and it looks like it's March 17th.
Well,
That's what Diane wanted to know.
those of us of Irish descent will not be working on that day.
That's my birthday.
Okay, thank you for that input. Okay, there being no other business prior to the public comments, we are now going to have our hearing on the challenge to the candidacy of Bruce A. Mitchell. And just by way of brief background, we received a challenge from Mike Kruk to Mr. Mitchell's candidacy in South Bend District 6 to run for city council. And the basis of the challenge is that Mr. Mitchell has not voted in two as a Democrat candidate, has not voted in two primaries, and failing, the way the law reads is if a person hasn't voted in two primaries, then they have to get the approval or the thumbs up of the party chair. And Mr. Kruk's position was he had not received either one of those. So I guess the first thing I want to do is ask Mr. Mitchell to stand up and indicate, apparently you've brought some witnesses with you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so I think what we start with is Mr. Kruk here?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Crook, can you come forward, maybe either sit here or at one of these microphones?
And I'd just like to clarify, the reason I filled that out is because I noticed the paperwork that Mr. Mitchell submitted, when it came to, I think that's questionnaire 3, neither box was checked. So I don't know if he's ever voted in 2 primaries or more than 2 primaries. I don't know if he just forgot to check it or what, but I noticed neither box was checked, and he was asking to run as a Democrat. So according to state statute, you have to check one or the other, and that's what the reasoning was behind it.
Okay, and so you don't know whether or not he's
No.
voted into, or whether or not he's gotten the approval of the party chair?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
I didn't look it up or anything like that. I just noticed neither box was checked.
Okay, I don't have any other questions for Mr. Crook. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Crook?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let's go to the next obvious place. Ms. Hess, would you come up and let us know whether or not he just inadvertently didn't check a box, or whether or not you've withheld? You're the Democrat Party Chair, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and have you denied him the opportunity to run in the primary?
I did, we chose not to certify him because he had not run and he had not voted in 2 primaries.
Okay,
That was our threshold for approving candidates. This year was the 2 primary threshold, and there were 2 candidates who fell into that category, and Mr. Mitchell was one of those 2. And he was informed of that.
why would that be a threshold if that's the law anyway, where he wouldn't need your approval if he's voted in 2?
Well, that's why we just determined that that was going to be we were not going to approve anyone who did not meet that qualification this year.
And when you say "we," who's "we"? Do you have an executive
Well,
committee?
party leadership, yes.
Okay. I'm not very familiar with Mr. Mitchell, but I have spoken with him a few times, and I've watched the news. Does this have anything to do with Mr. Mitchell's affiliation with the Black Lives Matter movement?
No, it does not. We met with Mr. Mitchell for a couple of hours, actually, and had a good conversation with him. Encouraged him to vote in this primary, get involved in the party, and run next time or run in the future.
Okay, and as someone who's done a lot of civil rights law, the reason I have to ask that question is because we have laws, anti-discrimination laws, and then we have these, this statute's fairly clear, and we communicated about how it's a fairly clear statute. It doesn't necessarily seem like it's a complex matter, but we have to make sure that we're not enforcing something that might have racial animus behind it. We can't do that as an election board, so that's why I have to ask that question.
Well, I really am offended by the fact that you would think I would do that we as a party would do that. We made a decision not to certify anyone who did not meet that 2 primary threshold this year. There were 2 candidates, again, that fell within that category, and one of them chose to run or to file, and the other one chose not to. And she's now involved with the party.
And was she also a Black Lives Matter candidate? Affiliated?
Not that I'm aware of.
Was she an African-American woman?
She is.
We have to delve, I mean, I'm not meaning to offend you, but we have to delve into that. We have to delve into that in order to make a finding. So that's what we have to do. I don't know you except from these meetings. I don't know you at all, but even if I did, I would still have to do it to do my due diligence.
Okay. But that was not the reason we made that decision not to approve anyone without that, regardless of their ethnicity.
Okay, and is that a new thing, or is that something that the party has done with regularity?
That rule only came into effect last year. I became party chair in October of '21, so that last year was our first election process that didn't even come up last year as an issue.
I just have one last question. If you will agree with me that if somebody had voted in 2 primaries, they would not need your approval, right?
That's correct.
Chuck, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Amy, any questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms.
I'll
Hess.
just make one last comment. That is one objective way we have of knowing if somebody is a member of our party, or not a member, because we don't have memberships in our parties or registration. So that is one way, objective way of determining if someone is a member of the, a Democrat.
And I'll say I understand that completely, because Indiana is a primary voting state where you're not supposed to cross party lines to vote in primaries, and so they've built these mechanisms in place in the statute. So appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, would you come forward?
Sir.
Can you tell us a little, I notice those are your dog tags?
Yes. It's,
can you tell us your...
Real combat boots worn in Iraq, and these are real dog tags that I wore in Iraq.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Come forward. The first thing you need to do is state your name and your address.
Yes.
Ms. Hess is on record, so we let her. And I think Mr. Kruk, we'll get back to that later if you're still here. Go ahead.
Yes, Bruce Mitchell, address 4442 Huron Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46619.
Thank you, sir. And how old are you?
I'm 32 years old.
And what's your educational background?
Educational, I'm a high school graduate,
Where'd you graduate?
Washington High School.
And after that, did you enter the military?
Yes, I did.
And what branch?
Army,
How many years?
5.
Were you overseas during primary elections?
Yes,
Any primary elections? Okay. And did you live in other locations before moving back to South Bend when you got out of the Army?
yes, I did.
Where did you live?
Kansas after, and then Texas after that.
And when did you move back to South Bend?
2016.
And have you had discussions with your party's leadership about why there's an opposition to you running in the primary?
There was really no discussion. I mean, there was discussion, but it was pretty much a lot of me being qualified to be on other committees and boards. I was never told that I wasn't qualified to actually run as a candidate. They were offering me to be on 100 Black Men programs and other committees and boards, even the board that they're on. That's pretty much a lot of what was offered. That's why a 30-minute meeting turned into 2 hours. I started to hear about how Don he failed election 3 times, and he's a cardiologist, and he wants to help with my BU movement and put my BU movement all over the Democratic page on Twitter and things like that. They offered to come volunteer under my events. They asked how many people do I bring out to my events, if I can bring voters, have voter registration set up at my events. So there was never any reason for me to feel that I wasn't qualified to run as a candidate. They did mention that, hey, normally they do 2, you're supposed to vote in 2 primaries. I did vote in 2016. They said I was only missing 1, but there was never inferred or it was never mentioned to me that I wasn't qualified. When I walked out of that door across the street from here for the Democratic Party headquarters, when I walked out of that door, it was Don and Diane standing at that door asking, please get with us about anything that you have in the future with your BU movement and all these things. There was never, no, you don't qualify.
Do you have an opinion or a belief as to why you won't get certified by your own party chair?
At first, I didn't want to believe. Now, I do. I mean, over the last week or 2, I do have a strong opinion or belief, and I do believe that now it is because of my race, ethnicity, background.
Okay, we're gonna have to keep the commentary down. You'll have your 2 minutes of public comment afterwards, and if you don't do that, then we'll call the sheriff to have you removed. This is a hearing. We need to treat it like a hearing. If you would like to be called back up, we'd be happy to accommodate that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me, what was the question before we were interrupted? I'm not sure what the.
Well, you said over the last couple of weeks, you've come to the conclusion that you think it was based on your race.
Yes, I definitely believe that it was based on my race. This couldn't have been a system that was firmly placed on me that day of. Don called me on Super Bowl Sunday, and his conversation, and he didn't know that I had other people in my vehicle when this was when he called me. His conversation was basically trying to get me to agree that I wasn't qualified on that day, and I mentioned to him that no, that was not the conversation. That you offered all these other positions to me. And he tried to get combative and argue over the phone. I told him I'm trying to enjoy my Super Bowl Sunday and that we can talk another time. He still was getting argumentative. I hung up the phone. The very next morning, I got a message from Don saying, hey, I'm sorry for messaging or calling you during Super Bowl Sunday. You know, if you would like to talk, please have a great day. Call me anytime. You know, so not once did he say, hey, what you were saying was wrong. The whole conversation called me at 8:45 p.m. on Super Bowl Sunday, asking me like, hey, how do you feel about this? And I said, well, you know, I'm a soldier. I still plan to run. You know, I'll be at the election board. And he said, well, didn't we like kind of, well, no, we didn't at all. And just by him doing that and then apologizing for it, I know that this wasn't a system that was solid. I knew that it was something that was trying to be figured out and trying to be worked out throughout this process. And I feel like I'm the bait or whatever the case may be, and I'm the one that says this is all being tried on. And it's unfair. I feel embarrassed. I fought for these rights, and for me to be standing here trying to defend something that I fought for, I served, regardless of South Bend District, I served. I served continuously since 2009 with my private business. South Bend, Indiana is aware, the Juvenile Justice Center is aware of it. I've done a lot of community work. People know me more than they know some of these council members. That is the truth. I don't feel that it should be held against me not voting in 2 primaries when during Black History Month, at some time ago, we didn't even have an option to vote. Our people, Black and brown people, don't know to get off in May to vote for 2 primaries. Now we get off in November. So now we have an opportunity to actually believe in something, and I do have a big following, a big influence in the community. I've taken my movement to 20 states, 28 cities. I've been around the world, and now I'm just trying to do my part here. And I have a lot of people that's looking at the first time they're looking into politics, the first time they're looking to be able to use their voice in this way. Not criminals, not bad people. These are just people that just feel inferior. They see hope through me, not just because of the BU movement, not just because of the military, but now through my mission to serve in this uniform, which is the political world. So long, we felt that we were abused by the system, and now we have an opportunity to be a part of it. And the whole reason why this person that so many people believe in is not able to be a part of it is because of one other primary, not because of a criminal record, not because I just didn't serve. You see, these are real servicemen right here. These are real combat boots right here. That's combat. But then also my track record here in South Bend, a lot of pictures, videos, and support. You know, Walmart would donate to me, Martin Supermarket, Enterprise Rental Car, Five Below, for me to help and to continue to do my community work. This is not a game to me. I'm simply here dressed like a soldier because this feels like a fight to me, to something that I shouldn't be having to fight. But at some point, I have to feel some type of dignity or pride and walk out of here regardless of what's said, that, hey, no matter what, I'm a soldier.
Yeah. What is, you mentioned Don a few times. Do you know Don's last name?
Wessenheimer, or something like, I'm not sure. He said he just got elected a week before that happened. Westerhouse.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
Westerhouse. Sorry about that.
my last question to you is, did Diana Hess ever tell you that you needed to vote in 2 primaries or you would not be a legitimate candidate? She would not give you the approval of the party chair to run?
Diana has never said those words.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Mitchell, I see that I have a copy of the Declaration of Candidacy form that you filled out,
Yes.
but I see that you didn't answer question number 3.
Okay, could you read question 3 to me, please?
And question number 3 is, You say, "I am claiming affiliation with the Democratic or Republican Party." Democratic Party is what you're claiming.
Right.
And I understand that my party affiliation is determined by which party I voted for in the last 2 primary elections in Indiana in which I voted. I understand that if I cannot meet this party affiliation, I must obtain and file with this declaration a certificate from the appropriate county chairman of the party indicating that I am a member of this party. And then the statement is, I meet the requirements to be affiliated with the political party indicated because, and it says check 1, and there's two choices, 2 boxes. Box number 1 says, the 2 most recent primary elections in Indiana in which I voted were the primaries held by the party with which I claim affiliation. Now, could you have checked that box?
Yeah, the reason why I didn't check the box, Diana Hess gave me a call and told me which forms to fill out once she told me that the party was not going to challenge my run. They told me that somebody could, anonymously could challenge my candidacy, but with her, she said that the party itself would not challenge it whatsoever. So she told me what forms to fill out. When I got off to fill out the Can 42, Can 12, I called her back and let her know that that same question right there, question number 3, she told me, well, just you don't have to mark either one, that you can just go ahead and fill those forms out. That's what Diana Hess called me and said to me.
Okay, but the form itself, though, is that you couldn't check that box, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the other box, you also couldn't check, is that right? Which is the county chairman of the party, the county chairman of the county in which I reside and of the political party with which I claim affiliation has certified that I am a member of the political party. So that didn't happen either, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So really neither of those apply, and so you left it blank.
Correct.
Okay. And the party didn't challenge you, did it? Diana Hess didn't challenge you. Is that correct?
She just told me to leave it blank and that the party wouldn't challenge. No, you're right.
So at the very last, just above your signature on the form, it says, I certify that the information on this declaration of candidacy is true and complete, and that I meet the specific requirements of this office.
Correct.
Okay, and so you're saying then that by leaving that blank, this is a complete form for your declaration of candidacy?
What I'm saying is I spoke with the party chair who was supposed to override that or have that control, and I went with what she told me to do.
You're suggesting that the party chair can override what the state law says you have to do?
Well, I thought that's the reason why it's a new law. That's the reason why we're even here today to begin with. So I thought that the party chair had that control. When I spoke with her, she let me know to leave those blanks, sir.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Amy, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
I do have some people that would like to speak in support of me as well.
Okay. Would you go ahead and give us why don't you just call them up one by one then?
Yes, would you like me to stand up here beside them, or?
That's up to them.
Okay, Ms. Dawn Jones, please.
Good
Na-
afternoon.
Name and at least your business address. I think you live in South Bend, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do, and I can give my address. Dawn Jones, 602 Cushing Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46616, office on the 4th floor. I'm here on multiple capacities in this community. In addition to being a community activist, a youth organizer, a mother, a grandmother, I have been a Democratic elected official for almost 25 years, whether with the school corporation or the city of South Bend. Those who know me know that I'm one to speak out against inequality. I can't help myself because there's so much of it. However, I'm not just here to ask for reconsideration concerning Bruce Mitchell, who desires to run for office, but to also stand in support of him as a young African-American Latino male who has thrown his hat in the ring, not just to be a council member, but to change the stereotypical image many in this community may have of him. We know as elected officials, regardless of our race, it is not easy to present your life before the public in this manner, as you are subject to much scrutiny for no reason. We have a young man here at this point who has been scrutinized just based on the color of his skin and ethnicity all his life. Yet, he was still willing to serve his country and now his community. We can't be mad because he is challenging an unjust law. He has proven that his character goes beyond himself. He has fought for equal rights all his adult life. I thank him for his service. As previously said, he is attempting to better the lives of many individuals in this community who look like him. That will not be an easy task considering how much has been stacked against him already before he reached this level. I respect him for his tenacity and dedication. His being allowed to run means so much more to his peers than just standing for office. It also shows that successfully opposing discriminatory laws in this capacity empowers our whole community. I applaud Mr. Mitchell for putting himself in this crucible of this sort of scrutiny on top of the racial criticism he has faced on a daily basis. And I hope that we all see the significance of this paradigm shift we may achieve by supporting efforts to transform all of our whole trajectory. I am asking, as a Democratic elected official who is constantly being challenged as well, as a community activist, as well as a youth mentor, in addition to being a mother of 2 naval sailors, for consideration not just on his behalf, but for everyone who continuously encounters inequitable rejection. Thank you.
We might have some questions for you, Ms. Jones.
Okay.
You said that you're an elected official as well?
Yes,
What office do you hold?
city clerk.
And was that an office that you needed to fill out those same types of forms for when you ran for election?
I'm sure, but don't ask me the questions because I don't remember.
Do you remember, did you face the same issue that Mr. Mitchell is facing of not voting in 2 consecutive primaries or not having the certification of the party chair?
No, I didn't even know that was a thing, but I will say this, and speaking on behalf of people in my community that look like me, we don't always know how important a primary election is. We tend to wait, and I'm not saying that's what Mr. Mitchell did, but we tend to wait until November because we think that that's the big election that has an impact when not realizing that it's the primary election that has more of an impact on our direct lives. So I will say there are a lot of people that wouldn't be qualified to run based on that. That is common knowledge. So I question the fact that that would even become a law because it is common knowledge that a lot of people are not, I guess, abreast on the importance of voting in a primary election.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Tom, I just have a statement. Dawn was caucused in, so she didn't have to do
Oh, okay.
what Mr. Mitchell had to do.
All right,
Right.
thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Okay.
Yes, I would like to call up Oliver Davis, please.
Oliver Davis, 1801 Nash Street, South Bend, Indiana. I would like to just share, I'm here for several reasons. Number one, I was a part of the group that helped to talk to several of the young men last year to encourage them to run for office. And I was glad that they decided to go ahead and run because of the fact that we have to help, as you all just talked about in your own meetings, to helping to look for a diverse team. I applaud the GOP because of the fact that they have really worked to do a very good job in doing a diverse team this year. Plus, they even supported a person in higher leadership last year. I talked to my leaders regarding that. A lot of these young people who have come to me have watched what has happened over the years. And I'm glad last year you finally had a poll in the 6th district, a voting place. We didn't have a poll. We were the only district in the 6th district in the year 2000 that did not have a poll in place. Every other district in this whole city had a polling place for the 6th district. Why is that? when I ran for commissioner. And there are rules in our party that state that when a high official endorses somebody in the Republican Party, that they are punished. But when John Voight came out against me, no punishment. Okay? And so people started looking at that. Why is our party looking at these kind of issues and it starts reflecting? They say, oh, no, we don't do that. Oh, yeah, we see it. We don't fight against incumbents. Yes, this is a lot of the issues that when my colleague, Mike Ruck, did not challenge when he saw John Voight do that and everything. Our own party said to this young gentleman, they were not going to challenge him. If they weren't going to challenge him, if this is something so wrong that our leader, our representative on the board would vote against it or anybody else, then our party leadership should have said no. For them to go neutral, when somebody goes neutral on something, if I say I don't worry about it, Daddy, can I go to the store? It's up to you. And she goes to the store and I punish her. Or say, no, I didn't say that. If I say it's up to you, it's up to you. She comes back home, it's up to her. No big deal. That's what was told to him. Up to him. It's up to you. And we want challenge. That's an up to you kind of a statement. And I really think that both parties need to look at this whole concept of this two-party kind of voting two primaries. Clerk Don Jones already talked about it. Because of the fact that when they came to me, I was not aware of that. I don't recall voting on this before this year of these kind of things. I was told it was a new law. And when I think about some of these new laws, where after so many years people are trying to purge laws anyway, I have great concerns when she talked about the primary laws because of the fact that it does challenge. And I told them there are sometimes that we need to come together with GOP or Republicans to challenge unjust laws. Unjust laws, when Dr. King talked about what was going on, when he referred to St. Augustine, saying if this is an unjust law, then there's no law at all. He talked about that on April 16th in the Birmingham jail in a letter to people. Unjust laws, when it comes down to that, we have an obligation to challenge unjust laws because they say, well, this gives us an indication of which way you're going to vote. Are you really a Democrat or Republican? Just because I vote two different primaries doesn't mean I'm going to vote as a Republican, as a Democrat. It really does not do that at all. There's some Democrats who vote as Republicans and Republicans who vote as Democrats, even though they fill that out. So you cannot, in any good conscience, as an elected official, and I'm the longest African American that's ever served a male in this city. Karen got me complete on the council. I'm the longest one. I was told not to, you could never win in the district and all that kind of stuff. Broke that barrier, okay? Because there were barriers out there. There's no doubt about it. And to see, my job is to help break these barriers and challenge this, and challenge it in my own party. Because there were many people who were angry. You ran against Dave Thomas, he was the incumbent. I said when Sheila Nagowski ran against me, which there's the party, where was the anger? Where was the anger? I was a two-time person. And again, so we've had, our incumbents get challenged by our party leaders. They don't speak up. Our incumbents don't have the same protection when it happens from that standpoint. And I've talked to our leadership about this. I talked to them last year. And so it's embarrassing to put this all out here, but it's the truth. Because again, we didn't have a voting president in the 6th district running for the whole county commission, and to have one of our leading Democrat persons challenge us, I don't mind losing. I've lost 4, lost 3, 4, whatever, 4-3, which is good as a Cup fan. Cup fan 4-3, whippity do. So I don't have a problem with that. But the problem is when your own party, I'm not even fussing at the GOP on this one. Okay? When your own party leadership picks and chooses what rules they will apply to certain people. Oh, with John Voight, we're not going to do nothing with him, okay? And other people, or our former other clerk, Roseberry, whatever, we're not going to do with her, even though she broke some of the things and how to handle things. But with him, oh yeah, we're going to come out and do that. I got a problem when our former county treasurer does that, when they do that and do not do that to the other people who don't look like us. That is wrong. And when I saw these young people go through that, I said, guys, I'm tired. I'm getting off the bench. Okay, let me go fill out. I'll get my form in tomorrow. I really forgot about that. I apologize. But I get that form in. But the bottom line, I had to tell them, I said, we come off the bench and help you all. Because let's look at it. It says he has to vote in 2 primaries. Well, if he doesn't vote in this primary, he doesn't vote in next year's primary. What is that, 2026 he can run? You have a man who's here, who has gone to battle, fought in here. It reminds me of the challenges my dad had coming back home from the Korean War. Here he is, Bronze Star from President Eisenhower, and all the mess he had to deal with in the state of Alabama. All these new rules he had to deal with. growing up with those stories all in my life, said I will be running because I got sick. Here's my father fighting for this country. He's still alive, 93 years old this year, and had to come back with these new rules that had to come up. And he had to sit after fighting for this country. And now to see it happen again in 2023, another young man comes in and be fighting for this, it's totally frustrating. And I said, shoot, our person in there may beat him, but let's beat him on the ballot box, and let's not beat him on technicalities and rules. Because unjust laws, to me, need to be challenged by both parties. And truly, this is another unjust law that has happened in our election system. In years past, we have challenged that. May we continue to challenge that, and I wish him the best. Thank you for the time.
I have just one or two questions.
Go for it.
You indicated that you were one of the people who was instrumental in recruiting Mr. Mitchell to run for office?
I recruited one of his top leaders and encouraged one of Mr. Jordan Geiger and told him he needs to get his team out here. And he called me up in December and I said, hey, he said, we got people to run. I said, wonderful, let's get them out here to run. I said, we need to keep our team done. I'm 54 years old and considered one of the youngest ones in the party. That's ridiculous. I said, we have to have another one.
Is Mr. Geiger the local head of the Black Lives Matter
That is
movement?
correct.
And did Mr. Mitchell ever indicate to you that he's a Republican?
No, I asked him. And he told me in 2016 he voted as a Democrat. I said, okay, cool. And I said, I asked him, I was straight up and said, since he told me, and you have it on record that he voted in 2016 as a Democrat, first things out of my mouth, what have you voted? He said, when in 2016 I was a Democrat, I went to war. I said, fine, let's continue to talk. Okay. And then they heard about these other rules. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Anybody else have any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
I appreciate your kindness.
You bet. Mr. Mitchell, let me, just for the sake of, I mean, I don't want to cut our hearing short, but
Yeah.
what I do want to say is if your other witnesses are basically going to echo what Mr. Davis has said and what Ms. Jones has said, I welcome them to come up to do that, but maybe be a little more brief than Mr. Davis was.
Yeah, so I appreciate the way you said that, because I want to say we all individuals here. No one echoes what anyone said. They're all speaking from the heart. But I'm glad that you said, be a little bit more brief. At first, I don't know if I was going to like that, but yes, Wayne Hubbard, please. And then after Wayne Hubbard, it'll be Henry Davis Jr. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, we'll just have the last one be Wayne Hubbard. So.
You have to lean in and tell us your name and your address, please.
My name is Wayne Hubbard, 4313 Windsor Place.
Okay?
Now, I'm trying to figure out how to say this the correct way. I mean no offense when I say this. I instead encourage you to have an open mind when I say this. But you look just like the other side. The only thing that divides you is a blue or red color. And then you expect us to trust that government, when how can you possibly accurately and adequately represent any of us when you know nothing about us? Which one of you live in the hood? Please raise your hand. Where?
Linden Street, near Olive.
Who in the hood do you know?
I don't have the time to go into a discussion.
Okay, when was the
about
last
this.
barbecue you went to? I'm trying to keep this brief.
I don't have the time
I
to
know
get
the
into
answer is no.
discussion about this, but quite frankly, after the meeting, come on up and let's talk about.
For sure, I have no problem with that.
I'd like to know where you've been, and I
behalf,
want
and I
to
want
tell
you
you
to
where I've
understand
been.
that you don't have the actual correct way to judge him. How could we know about, I didn't know about the primaries. I could point to you hundreds of black men and women that did not know about the primaries. That is not fair, and that is gatekeeping.
Right, exactly, but understand who you're criticizing here.
You.
Right, well, okay, we are the people who are
In charge.
reading, hang on here. We are people who are reading what the state law says, right?
Yes.
But we didn't write the state law.
I know
We
that.
didn't write what the requirements are that are
I
on
have
this form.
ADHD, so I have to go point for point when you say something, okay?
Okay.
So I just wanted to address what you just addressed, okay? What I'm saying is that so you don't have the power. Are you trying to express to me that you guys do not have the collective power to let this man run, a man that looks like us, that our youth can trust?
Our job is to apply election law as it's written. It's unfortunate in a number of reasons, and I.
Is that the only
I'm happy
definition to your
spell-
job?
I'm happy to spend some time with you. But the question is, once you say we're not going to apply this law, what about this one over here?
Morality
What
is
about
the
this one?
difference between all of that whataboutism. Knowing the difference of we're not going to cross this line versus a line that would
I
be great for
appreciate-
the black people in
I
districts.
appreciate your position on that.
Mr. Hubbard, I want to respond to your question,
Sure.
too. I think if we find as an election board that this law is being applied in a racially unfair way,
Yeah.
that we don't need to follow that law, and we should not follow that law.
But what's fair about that, to make a statement like that, would be to say, wait, let's hold a census on how many people are aware and conscious of the primary law in black neighborhoods, specifically his. We would postpone this right there and now if you truly believed and stood on what you said right there. We would give more time to actually get the best census you could, and I guarantee you 99% are going to say, what is that? This is what we learn in the hood. And if you are from the hood, then you know this is true. This is what we have access to. This is the education. Welcome to the public schools. I'm sure y'all have your own problems with the way the public schools work. It is not the best, especially for my people. I'm not just here to criticize y'all. I'm trying to explain to you, please do not make that mistake, because you will lose more faith than you could possibly imagine in the black community. Because him not voting, even if he did know, who's to say that he had faith in either candidate? But because again, the enemy, what is the point in running, like Malcolm X said, what is the point in running from the arms of the wolf into the arms of the fox? How is he supposed to know who's good and who's not? And him not being able to determine who's a snake and who's not does not determine whether he is or not, or whether he's qualifiable or not. So for something this simple to be something that stops a man like him, not somebody out here doing every other option provided to black men in these streets that he was subject to, he was at risk of, the choices he made. I've never seen him say he was a Republican, but I've always seen him say he was an American. That should mean something to every one of you sitting there, because you're supposed to be that before anything else. I'm
Thank
done.
you. Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. Any questions, Amy?
No question.
I want to say that these guys may sound angry. I'm not angry. Politicians, and we know you guys have thick skin, so do soldiers. We're going to end it off with Ricky Hurst, please.
Let me respond to that.
Yes.
We as attorneys have very thick skin, too.
Yes.
And we, as those of us from any kind of Irish descent, which is mine, understand passion.
Yes.
And there's a big difference between
Yes.
passion and anger. I didn't take Mr. Hubbard's comments to
Thank
be
you.
angry in any manner.
Thank you, thank you. I'm not, just let you know. Mr. Herbst, and that'll be all for me. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I apologize, I didn't write notes as eloquent as Don and others. But my name is Richard Herbst. I'm at 702 Philippa Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46619, which is in the 6th District. I just wanted to point out, and if I may, ask a couple questions about the standard of review, because this process has been a little Byzantine for many in the community, and we just have general questions about what would have happened or what the hypotheticals are, which are very useful for us to locate as we work through something that hopefully ends with more inclusion for all involved in the political process. And it's worth noting, I think, when you have squishy and subjective standards of review, like the way the election law is set up, that even though people may not have animus in their heart, it can creep in, and you have to look at results and see what's happening because of this. And if certain people are left off of the ticket, then you have to see whether or not that does evince the animus that you mentioned earlier in the meeting. A general question, had the form not been challenged, would Mr. Mitchell be on the ballot?
Yes.
Okay, so but for Mr. Kruk's challenge, he would have been on the ballot?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any way to shift those challenges or review them after, I guess it was Friday at noon, or are those set in stone?
Those challenges have to be determined by in this cycle, by the 23rd.
Okay, so they are
of this
revocable?
month. Oh, he can revoke his challenge if we have to make a decision by the 23rd. We thought that since we're having our regular meeting today, that we would take it up today rather than waiting until the 23rd to take it up.
Okay. And if he were to revoke his challenge, could someone then file another challenge because we've past the, whatever it was, February 4th at noon deadline.
I don't think that somebody could file a new challenge. I think if his challenge is revoked, it's revoked, and if it's done before we make our determination, then we're done. We don't have anything to vote on.
Wonderful. Well, I do hope this is resolved, and I do hope that we have more people not only on this ballot in the upcoming primary, but down the line in the community. And I do think a lot of eyes are on this decision that's being made both before you and as a party, and I hope we come to the right decisions along that path. Thanks.
Anyone else? Mr. Davis, Jr.?
He had to go, no, that'll be it, sir.
That will be it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can I ask you a question, Mr. Mitchell? Are you a Democrat?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have any other questions? No?
Thank you.
I will now entertain two motions. One is to, oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Thank you, Diana. You want, Chairwoman Hess, did you want to come back up, please?
I did. Even though we did not file a challenge, and I didn't expect to speak today because we did not file the challenge, I just wanted to address a few points that were made. Number one, when Dr. Westerhausen and I met with Bruce, one of the first things we told him was that we were not going to certify him because of we were using the 2 primary threshold this year. And he was one of 2 candidates who fell into that category. So then that's what led to the other conversation about how he could get involved, become more involved, vote in the primaries and so forth. So he did vote in the primary in 2016. He voted in the general election in 2018 and no elections after that. And I just wanted to comment that the other young men who filed to run on the ballot this year, Mr. Geiger, Mr. Duncan, and there were several others who filed to run in primaries this year, did vote in primaries, were aware either that they had to or just that it was their civic duty to vote in primaries and vote in elections, and they had done that. And that's why they are on the ballot without needing any certification from the chair. So I think that's all I want to say. And again, he had called me. I returned his call. He asked me about checking boxes, and I indicated that if he checked either box, he would not be truthful. So that was the discussion. Thank you.
I have some follow-up questions to that. I'm having trouble understanding why you would pass a rule for certification which says you don't get my blessing unless you don't need my blessing. In other words, you don't disagree with me that you could have certified him having voted in 1 or 0 primaries, correct?
We could have done that, yes.
Okay.
But then once we had made that decision and it applied to 2 different people, for us to change that, that affected the other person that was also denied, and it was too late for her to file at that time.
And that person was also African American?
Yes.
And do you think that you're better to speak to the issue than the doctor who came up and spoke to us about what African American people know about their obligations to vote in primaries?
I can't say that. I'm just saying that there were people who had actually voted in the primaries. That's why they're on the ballot now.
Okay. And do you have any doubt that Mr. Mitchell's a Democrat?
I never said I doubted that he was a Democrat.
Okay. And you heard
I didn't file the challenge then either.
No, but Mr. Kruk is a political insider for the Democrats, is he not?
I have no control over what Mr. Crook does.
Okay. And you heard Mr. Davis's testimony?
I did, and I've spoken with Mr. Davis.
And Mr. Davis indicated that there's been several times when people have been certified by the chair without having voted in 2 primary elections.
I'm not sure how he would know that, and I don't know that because I've only been chair since October of 2021.
Is the reason that you didn't certify Mr. Mitchell's candidacy because there's an incumbent, Ms. Nizagowski, and you want to protect her campaign?
No, absolutely not. Again, because the party does not involve itself in primaries. I myself was primaried in 2014, and I did not get any help from the party.
How can you say when you have the authority of the pen to veto or to approve somebody's candidacy, how can you say that the party doesn't get involved in determinations of primaries? Seems to me you've made a very clear determination in this particular case that one of your own is not going to run in this election because of the two primary other possibility.
I had never met Mr. Mitchell before, okay, so that's part of the situation. Again, like we said, we do know that somebody is a Democrat, or that's an objective way of looking at the measure of whether somebody's a Democrat or Republican is how they voted in the primary elections.
It's not the only way, though. That's why you have that authority.
Yes,
to
but I
certify
had
somebody.
not met Mr. Mitchell before either until this year.
Is there a reason today that you would not certify his candidacy?
Because I think
Knowing
it would
what
be,
you've
I
heard?
think it would be unfair to the other candidate who did not file because she was given the same information.
So do you think, you heard their testimony about how this has, while there may not be direct racial animus, it does have a negative impact on a particular race of people. This decision-making does have an impact negatively. Is that something that you don't want to correct as best you can?
We made a decision. We informed people of that decision. We handled it fairly, and we opted not to challenge Mr. Mitchell. I can't help it that somebody else in the 6th District made that challenge.
Yes, but you could have overridden that challenge, right?
There's no way to override a challenge.
You could give him the authority and your blessing to run. In other words, we could still process this application with that box checked that Diana Hess has given Mr. Mitchell the authority to run in the primary, even though he hasn't voted in 2 primaries. Couldn't you do that?
The party leadership decided we were going to stick with that 2 primary threshold this year.
My question was to you. Don't you think you have the ability to do that?
I probably could.
You haven't answered my question, and I'm
I
going
could
to
do that.
remove you
I
if you
could do-
talk before it's your turn to talk.
I could do that.
Okay, and can you
But
tell me?
again, I opted, I don't think that would be fair to the person who did not file.
Okay, so I guess my last question is, do you think in fairness to one person who did not file, you're going to act in unfairness to one person who did file?
Well, you're saying that it's unfair. I think that we've been honest with everyone and fair with our decision-making.
I've asked all the questions I need to ask. So, did you, apparently, Mr. Mitchell, you wanted to call your witnesses back up?
I think we're getting into, I mean, the whole purpose of these hearings is to take evidence. I don't think we necessarily need to spend time listening to a variety of arguments that are outside of the evidence that we need to consider in terms of making this decision. So I really don't want to get into a political discussion. I don't think it's useful.
I agree that we're here to take evidence, and that's what my questions are geared towards, and I think these gentlemen in the back, these people in the back, want to respond with testimonial evidence. So I'm going to allow them to come up. Tell us your name again.
Wayne Hubbard.
Thank you.
And so my response to a couple of things that she had said, which all seems unfair because she used a strategy which is called tokenizing. And she talked about the couple of black people that were aware of the primary. It's hard to talk politically correct, so to speak. If the other person that was trying to run didn't run because they were under the same situation, and that is her rebuttal to it, then why not just undo it and let her run as well?
Thank you.
Let the other candidate run as well. There's a
you.
way around all of it. I just wanted to make sure that it was done properly.
Thank you.
90% of what she said is...
We need your name and address.
Yeah, my name is Jordan Geiger, 302 South Falcon Street. I just want the record to reflect that I know myself and Drew, who's in the back, were mentioned, but I want to note that myself and Drew are running against 2 other black people. Bruce is the only one of us who is running against a white challenger. And it's well known that Sheila Niskoski, her and her husband, they bring money to the party. They have influence over the party. When I met with Diana Hess, and this is not, I'm not against you, but she did say that, the Niskoskis, she acknowledged that they do bring money to the party, and we know that with money comes influence. And so it's just odd to me, and Mike Crook has admitted so, that he would file in order to protect Sheila as a favor. I think that in itself indicates or signals that there's some insider politics taking place here. Just let Bruce run. If Sheila can beat him, she's an incumbent, she's worth millions of dollars, let him lose. Let him lose fair and square. If Diana allowed for him to file, why not just allow for him to run? She allowed for him to file. She gave him instruction as to how to fill out the paperwork.
Thank you.
So that's my time.
Thank you.
Drew Duncan, 2103 High Street, South Bend, Indiana. I really came because I was one of the people who were mentioned as a person who's voted in the primary, and I have. In 2020, I ran for state rep. But as I pay attention to the hearing and as we're looking at if this is right or wrong, and one, I'd like the committee to ask the question, what district was the African-American woman going to run in? Because I think that is important for us to have that knowledge, who she was going to challenge, if she was going to challenge anyone. And that will give us somewhat of a playbook if they have used the same rule to try to disqualify another candidate. In addition to that, as I hear the process, as I am a person who's gone through the process several times to file, I think the responsibility that lies on the party is when you have someone young and maybe does not know all of the ins and outs of running, the purpose of the chair, the purpose of the party is to educate people who are trying to take a part of their civic engagement and do their duty. And so when I hear from today's testimony that there's been back and forth, there's been some ambiguity in what the process was, the chair saying, hey, we're not going to challenge you, fill the boxes out like this. But obviously with her being the chair, knowing that if the paperwork was not filled out right, that today we would end up here. It's also concerning to me, as you said, Chair, that the rule is written so that the chair becomes the kingmaker of the primaries. Either you vote it and you don't even have to talk to the party, or the party must give you a kiss and anoint you to run in the primary. And in the history of South Bend, and I'm sure the GOP has been watching closely for the last couple decades, the Democrats have been in the history of protecting incumbents, as any party does. But if we're applying that to today, if we're applying that to the ambiguity in the instruction given to file and that we would not challenge, if we look at the somewhat concerted effort by political insiders who were elected or work for the party and no one's seen them in years to file this. Again, as a person who was mentioned, I would just say that I would like that evidence to all be considered and that for that question to be asked of the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crook, I'd like to call you up for one more question.
It was the second district.
Thank you.
The person who wanted to file was in the second district.
I actually have two more questions for you, Mr. Crook. One is, did you have any conversations with Chairwoman Hess about issuing this challenge with her blessing?
I let her know that I would be challenging.
And my second question is, there was questioning earlier about what happens if you revoke your challenge. Have you changed your mind, or are you going to stay with your challenge?
I'm going to stay with it, and I want to explain why. And first, I want to say, Mr. Mitchell, have we ever met before?
Hold on. We have to just,
Okay.
you can have those conversations with him, or you can.
Well, I
briefly-
just wanted to ask if we have ever met before, because there's been a lot of innuendos or things said here that are just flat and out false.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever met you that I'm aware of. I was not aware of who he was, his ethnicity, or anything when I filled that form out. I swear to God, I swear to God, you know, I'm not necessarily a believer, but if that's the phrase, I swear to God, I did not know anything about this young man before I filled that out. So when all these different things are said about the parties trying to do this or that, it's just flat and out false. We have to have rules, no matter what you're doing. We have to have rules. When I was a county treasurer, I had to follow state law. It was on a regular basis that people would come into my office, ask me if I could bend the law here, look the other way here, give me extra time here, even though the law stated different. I said, once I do that, once I open that can of worms, there's no going back. Everybody is going to want something then. So I always played it by the rules. I did the same thing when I was the business rep at our union hall. Guys would come in, want me to do this for them, do that for them. I said, no, because once I do it for you, I've got to do it for everybody. You have to have laws in order for a system to be fair. These are extremely low hurdles to overcome. 2 primaries. I mean, 2 years in a row you go vote and bingo, you've done it. Nobody's trying to exclude Mr. Mitchell from running for office. He can still run. It's just the state law says if you are going to choose a party, in order to be one party or the other, you have to meet these requirements as stated out in state statute. And if that's the standard that our party is using, then so be it. But at least it applies fairly to everybody. It applies fairly to everybody. If the party starts saying, well, you know, maybe we'll let you run because of this, then another person comes along and says, well, what about me, or what about me? So when you've got something that's spelled out, and again, in my opinion, it's an extremely low hurdle, then it's applied fairly to everybody, and there's no issues down the road.
Did you, Mr. Kruk, did you review every form that was filed by every candidate within the?
I didn't
filed on
get them
behalf of
all
the
in
Democrats?
time. I have been reviewing some, but I didn't get them all in time. I received this one ahead of time, and
Who'd
the
you
other ones
receive
that
it from?
Pardon?
Who did you receive it from?
I received it. I don't know how that's pertinent to this evidence here.
I mean, did you make some kind of a request to the clerk's office, or did you have somebody who
I've
gave it to you?
requested, yes, I've requested some from the clerk's office.
And how did you know which ones to request if you didn't know what was on them?
I requested all of them.
Okay, and they've been given to you piecemeal? Is that what your testimony is?
No, I'm saying I got some of them late, is what I'm saying.
Okay, and you do understand finally that that's the way you just recited the law is not an accurate recitation of the law. The law
Well, I
says
don't have it in front of me.
the law says if somebody has voted in 2 primaries, they don't need anybody's permission to run.
Correct.
If they have not voted in 2 primaries, then they need the party chair's permission. Either one of those is a way for them to be certified in a primary.
Correct.
Okay, so as I asked Chairwoman Hess, aside from her not certifying him, had she decided to certify him, your challenge would have been overruled, right?
Correct. I wouldn't have filed a challenge because he would have checked that box.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think at this point, we'll leave things for the public comment phase, and then, because I think we need to wrap this up. I think that we have a couple of different options. Well, the one option, Chairwoman Hess, can I ask you just one more question? Would it be something you would be interested in for us to table this until the 23rd to give you more time to consider possibly certifying his candidacy? Or is that decision made?
You can, tabling is fine. You can table it.
I mean, okay, then, so we have, one option is to table this to see if there's going to be a change of position. Another option is to vote on it. So I'll hear a motion from either one of you.
I move to table till our next meeting.
Okay, and our next meeting is going to have to be soon because this has to be done by the 23rd. Chuck, do you want to second that?
I'll second.
Okay, all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the matter passes unanimously. Okay, now, finally, before we go into,
Hey, Mr. Tom.
yes.
I just want to simply say thank you. This whole thing, I just want a fair chance to fight. That's it. I might have no problem losing my race and shaking her hand and endorsing her afterwards. Just give me a chance to fight. I'm a soldier. That's all I want. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving me more time. And thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, let me speak on behalf of all of us without
Yes.
any regard to any political party at all.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for your military service.
Thank you. Thank you.
And secondly, thank you for having the heart of service after the military that makes you want to make a change in our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So when we get to our public comments, we're already an hour and a half into the meeting. So I'm going to try to limit them today to 2 minutes, bearing in mind that this issue, that the last one that came up, we'll have time at the next meeting to make comments on it as well. So I'm going to, if you want to come up to make comments, please keep them to 2 minutes. And okay. And we don't start the time until they've actually identified themselves and their address. That's a little unfair, especially if they've got a really long
Can we,
name.
before we get to public comment, can we cycle around to the question you asked me at the
Yeah,
beginning?
do you have a number?
I do. In consultation with Nick, it depends a little bit on whether or not Roseland actually has a primary, but I would open 24 of the vote centers. And then if Roseland is going to actually have a primary, then I would open Clay International at 25th because that's closest to Roseland. And I sent that list to all of you.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to authorize 24 vote centers for the municipal elections and a 25th vote center if Roseland is having a municipal election.
I second.
And I assume that the motion is going to be a motion that this apply to calendar year 2023.
Just to count, exactly, thank you, just for calendar year 2023. And also, I think if it turns out that our numbers are incorrect, we'll bring it back up next time and correct it. But did you second it, Chuck?
Yes, I did.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the matter carries unanimously.
Yeah, and it would help, Dave, if we could have a specific list of the.
I emailed you one.
The actual.
I emailed the
actual names
election
of each center.
board,
Okay.
Kim, Tricia, Nick.
Very good, thank you.
So the parties will look at those too, be able to look at those vote centers.
I'll send it to you, Diane. Okay, thanks, Susan.
Okay, go ahead.
Me? My name is Cindy Strike. I live at 5808 Aberdeen Drive, South Bend, Indiana, 46614. For the past 12 years, I have served as a supervisor of absentee voting in St. Joseph County. It has indeed been an honor and a privilege to have this position. I can honestly say that I have done an excellent job along with my coworkers, including the other supervisor, Nancy Lindsay. We have always worked well together. We made sure that the office was operated in a bipartisan way. Our job was to serve the public, and that is exactly what we have done. I certainly appreciate the help and support given by former employees, Rita Glenn, Terry Breathlake, Penny Stratton, and Lana Cleary. It is unfortunate that none of these ladies are here anymore. I also appreciate the assistance given by Party Chair Diana Hess. Thank you, Diana. Many of the people employed in this absentee office worked together for years. Actually, one of the employees here is Pat Schaefer. I also applaud them for their dedication and work ethic. There were many times that they came in at 6 a.m. and left at 6 p.m. We had a job to do, and we got it done. Due to the horrible, unfortunate things that happened in the fall, I will no longer be working as an absentee supervisor. I do have some concerns regarding the upcoming primary election. First of all, I hope that all employees, whether Democrat or Republican, be treated equally and fairly. Number 2, that the office be operated in a bipartisan way. Number 3, that cooperation is a must between the absentee office and the clerk's office. Number 4, that all eligible voters be treated in a respectful way. Number 5, that people know and understand that we are there to serve the public, that this must be done fairly. I am thankful for the opportunity to have served the public in this position for the past 12 years. I sincerely hope that all goes well in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Eli Wax. I'm a resident of South Bend, but I'm here as a former deputy commissioner, and I just wanted to, you talked about setting up a potential dress code or looking into that for the future for election workers specifically. One thing I did want to point out is I was one of the deputies who had the opportunity to go to that site visit, actually both visits that came up today. But on the issue of dress code, there was a second issue at that same site with the MAGA hat. There was another election worker who was working more on the technology side, but had visible displays of political statements on his equipment that was also disturbing members of the public. So I just wanted to point that out. So as you're looking into policies of making all voters comfortable, to look in both, it's not only dress code, but it may be other materials that the person may bring with them to the election.
Thank you.
Pam Clays, 1106 Bellevue Avenue in South Bend. I have a question as to how much that bill from Masters and Feeney was, because that wasn't mentioned. If you could give that amount, I'd appreciate it.
So this is, I think we have the total bill, and this bill is the part that was not, is still outstanding, if I'm not mistaken. The total bill looks like it was $5,220, and the outstanding portion that is yet to be paid is $2,235.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike McManus, 51940 Lilac Road. I was with Eli at that visit. The gentleman with the MAGA hat was very aggressive. I don't care if you pay him or not. He was wearing it proudly.
Stop his time, just to clear it up. The guy who we're talking about paying.
Mr. Hamilton,
I think. Yeah, the one out in.
Yeah,
I think the MAGA hat guy already got paid. I think.
Oh.
Because I don't think we had an issue. The issue never came up to us.
Well,
Yeah, it wasn't an issue.
the
so-
gentleman that had the MAGA hat, I thought that's not the same guy that was on the agenda?
No, the guy on the
Oh,
agenda is
okay.
Mr. Hamilton out at Smug. You guys went out to Smucker to try to get him to stop the aggressive anti-electioneering stuff.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Please don't allow him to go back. He really upset a lot of citizens. We spoke to a number of people, and he
You're
was...
referring to the MAGA guy? Or
No,
the guy,
no,
Mr. Hamilton?
No. The MAGA guy, in my view, and this is my personal subjective view, he was, it was an in-your-face act to wear it. The other sign that Eli just referred to, it was not up when we were there. We don't know if he put it up after he left or not. He told us he thought he could keep it up if he wanted to, but he did take it down. But I only raised that because it just came up. Ms. Hurley, you are not a Democrat, and I object on the record for you sitting there as the Democratic representative for elections. And Ms. Rolfes, I object to you appointing her. She is not a Democrat. And I'd like to remind everybody, I'm sorry that the press has left, that it was the Republican Party who refused to allow for rules Mr. Connery from running on your basis and in your races as a Republican. So this is a very passionate issue. I think Mr. Mitchell is passionate about being candidate. I take no position on his candidacy or why he is or is not a candidate. However, I will point out that I think that this was political theater. This was set up so you would not have to take the responsibility for following the law. You wanted to make it look like the Democratic Party was anti-black or racist or something like that, and we all know that's just not right.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and when are we having the hearings on the complaint against Ms. Carrico and
I'm
Mrs.
glad you brought
Upchurch?
that up, and this will be in the minutes. So we checked it downstate on that, and there is no violation to be had, so there's no hearing to be had.
I beg to differ with you, and I'm going to ask you to, in writing, to have a hearing, and you can write back to me and tell me whether or not you're going to have one, but.
You got my email?
I checked, now I do, I think I do.
I'll give you my card.
All right.
Okay, but we do have to set our next meeting before the 23rd to vote on this issue. I guess we have to set it for the 23rd to vote on the issue and/or vote that the issue is mooted, depending on if we hear anything back from Chairwoman Hess. My schedule on the 23rd is open all afternoon. Do we have someone who can check to see if we're available here? If we have availability here, next Thursday afternoon?
I'm not so sure that Heather is in still. It's after hours. She's probably going for the evening. I can contact her.
Well, that's okay. What we'll do, I mean, we've done this once before. If we have to meet down in the basement and cramp it in, because it's going to be a fairly brief meeting, probably longer with public comment. But let's Chuck, are your schedule okay on Thursday?
On the afternoon of the 23rd, yes.
How about you, Amy? Let's say 3 p.m. on the 23rd?
All right, I'll try to get the room. If not, it'll be in the.
We'll do it in this room, and if it's not available, our default room will be just down in the basement unless we can find someplace else, and that'll go out because we'll have to get public notice out of that as well. But we'll have to get working on that to see if we've got availability here. Sound good? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, it carries unanimously. We are adjourned.